Hey everyone, this is Mike Witt and Matt Scott with Kontek Industries, and we're here for episode number 19 of Complacency Kills, a Kontek podcast. And the main point or topic we'll be focused on today is talking about kind of weapons ports. A lot of people aren't familiar with them, so kind of just going over what they are, what their purpose is, what the differences are, and some of the applications that some of our customer base that would be listening to this might have interest in exploring in the future. So Matt, if you want to kind of say hi, maybe lead us in and kind of what you do here and maybe how you get involved in weapons sports on a pretty frequent basis.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Matt Scott here. I am the Critical Infrastructure National Sales Manager. I've been doing this for about 5 years now and rightfully enjoying so. I've been kind of integrated in this mix and selling ports now for quite a bit, and really what we see when engaging with a lot of customers and their ports are their misconception of just firing a weapon out of nothing. Well, what if you had the opportunity of being protected and opening up, well, let's say a 12 by 12 space, and you're protected and you're able to take out the enemy. So ports are sort of important.
So could you give our listeners just a basic definition of what a weapons port is?
Yeah, a weapons port is your basic construct of a ballistic cover that can either deviate left or right and cover.
All right, perfect, super helpful. So when it comes to weapons ports, typically you're going to find them in an existing hardened position, right? So a guard booth, a armored shield position, and so when it's fully closed, the position itself is entirely protected from ballistic threats. And so, port just is in the same concept you would find like a port hole on a ship, right? It's a hole in the side of a ship usually used for observation. It's the same exact concept. However, it's usually a piece of ballistic glass or ballistic plate that is there that can be slid to the right, to the left, or manipulated in some fashion to allow a security officer to observe and engage targets while remaining primarily fully protected, or as protected as possible if they use the port properly. And so when it comes to weapons ports, there's really two, again, going back to ballistic standards, there's two ballistic standards that are typically used, the NIJ standard and the UL 752 standard that's used more worldwide. And with those, right, we do and create weapons ports that protect everything from small pistol rounds all the way up to heavy duty 50 cal armor piercing rounds. And so with that, we want to take that weapons port to match whatever threat environment that you're in. We get the flexibility. There's pros and cons to going heavier, right? When you go heavier, they become much more difficult to manipulate. But the benefit is obviously increase in added protection versus more, a more agile, lightweight weapons port. But with that being said, Matt, I mean, we here at Kontek we have a quick handful of about 4 different standard weapons port styles, and then a bunch that we do custom work on that don't really fit into either one of those 4 categories. But if you could go through and kind of walk everyone through our basic lineup and
of course.
What the differences are. Yeah.
So we have our basic GP1 port. So our basic port that's basic slider slides left and or right, or you talked about earlier. And, that's, I would say that's the most standard and generic version of the ball port, but it ranges from NIJ 4 all the way up to 50 cal. So we see a lot of customers actually wanting to get that, just because everyone loves basics. But I mean, it does the job. And then further on, more so, we have our more advanced port, and that's the GP2, and that's our kind of our weathering port. Now, what you were talking about earlier is like manipulating the ports. We see a lot of customers, but also officers manipulating these ports and having a better weapons platform to utilize. What we have is a 8 to 12 inch arm on this GP2 port, the weather port. And you're able to kind of swing that to the left or swing it to the right and kind of lock in position and have a small opening more so than just a 12 by 12 opening. So that kind of better protects that officer. And it also seats fairly well and it combats the weathering elements fairly well. And then we get into the nitty gritty and the all protection, the ball port. Everyone is like, well, what's that? Well, imagine yourself in a turret or a tank, and you're well protected, and you're able to blast everyone away. So it's pretty awesome.
Real scientific breakdown.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But what it is an actual ball port, and you can actually manipulate it left or right. But you have your glass cartridge up top, and that glass cartridge actually protects you when you're able to visually see out of said port and having your compensator insert into the ball port while engaging the enemy or threat.
Yeah, and to be clear, when you're referring to the ball port, the nomenclature for that we use is the GP3, just so if anyone's tracking our website or following along in our catalog. And then I'll pick it up here at the end. So we have a variant of the GP3, which we call the GP3M, which is a miniaturized version of the GP3. And its primary purpose is to be retrofitted into armored vehicles. So a lot of armored vehicles will have weapons ports in them. So officers, when they're using them, can either engage with the public, pass objects through, and or engage with their weapon systems, lethal and non-lethal weapon systems. So what we have done is taken that rough opening, which is a fairly large one, and we've been able to retrofit a GP3 port into that existing opening. And what that's done is it takes an area of approximately 7 inches by 11 inches that an officer is completely exposed through, and we take that exposure to next to zero, especially once their weapon is inserted into the GP3M. Again, they have the ability to view, engage the threat, but they're still remaining fully protected behind ballistic materials. Those are the main systems that we design and manufacture here. However, within each one of those, we've done customized variants of those systems that might better meet the mission specific needs of whatever that customer is looking for, whether it's adding embedding viewports into the weapons port, whether it's taking a standard GP1 and cutting it in half, right? So they have the ability to traverse left, right, up, down, just dependent on how they want that port to operate. So again, there's a lot of opportunity out there, I should say, for meeting your specific needs. But one of the things I want to mention that I think is interesting is that coming from prior military and doing a lot of anti-terrorism force protection work when you're standing posts, whether it's at a base, stateside, or you're at a small fob deployed, there's a lot of things that are seen and used in the nuclear industry and in the DOE that aren't necessarily standardized or a norm in the military. And part of that, I think, for anti-terrorism force protection work is weapons ports. I know some guard booths and some standards from the Army Corps of Engineers, they do incorporate weapons ports, but they're not very advanced. They don't really offer a lot of capability. So what I would like to see in the future, and what we're trying to do here at Kontek on the defense side, is kind of open people's eyes to what other technology is out there. Because if you don't know it's there, a weapons port, at the end of the day, it's a basic concept, open and close, but there's a lot of detail that can go behind it that people just aren't aware of, that I think, Marines and sailors and soldiers could take benefit from, for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Without majority of the listeners probably falling asleep now, what I'd like to say is, from your past experience, you had no ports, I'm assuming, in your military career.
No.
So tell me a bit about how a port would have at least assisted or supported you and or your fellow Marines while in combat.
Well, I mean, the application that I really see for it, if you're talking like forward deployed, obviously, if you have a fixed fob or somewhere like that where you're running ECPs for troops coming in and out. Obviously, there when you're standing post and you have a 240, 249, anything like that, going from a wide open position that could be several feet by several feet that's surrounded by sandbags, but ultimately you're essentially from your shoulders up is completely exposed. There are systems and solutions out there that can close that space in with ballistic protection pretty easily. And so it just, what it does is it increases the survivability of whoever's standing post at an ECP, or an Overwatch or anything like that. So it increases their survivability. And in some cases, depending on what kind of weapon support and weapon systems you're using, it can even increase their lethality as well. Yeah.
And just to hit on that, I mean, I've seen now, like back in the day when we were rolling with Buffaloes, and 8x8, 6x6, all that jazz. they had these small intricate ports in the doors, but now, I mean, with Kontek especially coming into play, we're able to go ahead and manipulate and put the GP3Ms into more up armored vehicles. Like you said, in sandbag bunkers.
Actually, it was pretty cool. Before we release this, I'll make sure we get authorization to talk about it. But if you're familiar with the company that manufactures the Rook, like the armored Bobcat with the shield system, very cool system. We've been working with them for the last year, and they're now integrating the GP3Ms into their armored systems. So I think more armored vehicle companies and stuff like that will continue to adopt it, because there is a benefit to it. It's a lot of it's pretty nuanced, and so the feedback you're really going to get from the officers that are in the field that are having to engage suspects or targets while being shot at, directly back at. And I mean, that's where the difference maker is, because to an engineer or to someone that's not actually being shot at while they're having to do their job, it doesn't make that big a difference. It's a hole, it opens, it closes, cool, do your job. So yeah, I think it does make a difference once you talk to those in the field that have used our weapon sports, and the safety it can bring an individual and allow them to focus and do their job, so they're not worried about getting
right. Now, my main market, which is nuclear DOE and power reactor sites. So, I mean, they're mainly dealing with fixed positions, whereas, a lot of other guys in this company, we deal a lot with shields, like for instance, the mobile response shield. And we integrated port. I think it was just a basic cutout. However, a simple port like that, and or something that we can actually lock into place. A simple 4x4, piece of rated steel, so to speak, that can actually adjust. So to, we're looking to protect lives and save people. So that's that's basic construct of these ports realistically, and then you obviously eliminating out the threat. But back in the day, that would have been very helpful.
Oh, for sure. So, I would just say this to wrap up is I would definitely start with saying, if you're in the nuclear or DOE industries, definitely take a look at Kontek and even other manufacturers out there. But look at what's out there for weapon sports, because the standard that came out 20 years ago when a lot of these defensive positions were put in place, weapon sports have come a long way. So definitely do your research out there and see what requirements do you really have for your officers, especially when it comes to force and drill, what's going to protect them the most, and ultimately produce a good result on your force. For law enforcement, definitely take a look at our GP3M. I don't really think there's anything else similar to it. I do know that there's a company from Israel that has a similar concept, but without going into the detail, it's not very mission adaptable to different weapon sets. It's primarily compatible with a standard M4A2 muzzle device. Outside of that, I've seen them used with MP5s and stuff like that. But if I can find it, I'll put a link with this podcast so people can see the differences. But yeah, so if you're in law enforcement, though, definitely take a look into how you can get your Bearcat or your armored vehicle upgraded to have more advanced and capable weapon sports. And on the military side, that's just something we're going to continue to push to gain exposure, because a lot of military leadership and those that are responsible for anti-terrorism, force protection technology, just that I don't think probably have investigated as far as they could or should.
I agree.
So anyways,
well,
that's kind of the takeaways I have.
Just one additional iota of information, especially for the new guys that are looking on, watching this. We have a retrofit kit for a lot of ports that adapt. So, if you have something that you currently don't agree and or like to use, we have an adaptable kit that has the GP1 all the way to GP3M that can adapt to said structure and or fixed position. Also, what you just hit on, we definitely refurbish any additional ports as well. So if you have an older port that needs newer rails or whatnot, we can also accommodate that.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us for these few minutes. Check us out on our website or email us at info@kontekindustries.com. And I hope you enjoyed as fun of a conversation we can make about weapons ports. Hopefully it was bearable. So anyways, enjoy. Hope everyone has a good Christmas. And we'll see you guys next year.